Okay, our first segment is good idea or bad idea. And I'm going to talk about free college tuition. This has been brought up in the Democratic debates, and it's a pretty big issue on their platform. In 2016, virtually no Democratic support was given to the idea, with only Bernie Sanders supporting it. Today, it has majority support. As polls and surveys would suggest, 63% of Americans support free college. So what is free college tuition in a nutshell? Bernie Sanders' proposal would eliminate undergraduate tuition at four-year public colleges and universities, lower interest rates, allow students to refinance into those lower interest rates, and simplify the student aid applications, which help low-income students. And all this would be paid by a Robin Hood tax on Wall Street. This is all according to a summary produced by Bernie Sanders. Now let's look at the three leading pros and the three cons. But first, I got to clarify a few things. There are essentially three types of colleges. Public colleges and universities, which are paid through by government and state taxes along with student loans, which is the type of colleges we're talking about. Private universities, that's like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, they're definitely not going to be free. And then there's for-profit schools like University of Phoenix, DeVry University, Bovine University. That last school might have been made up, but we're also not talking about those schools either. The public colleges and universities would be made free. All right, so the pros would be, well, it's free. The tax on Wall Street would take care of most of the cost, and you really can't beat that. And there's absolutely nothing to question about that. It's free. Freeing up capital can lead to saving money for a house, saving for retirement, things like that, things you really can't do if you're buried in debt. Second thing to look at is, and this is going by a 2017 study, is the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate without a college degree is 5.4%. With a 2-year degree, it's 3.8. With a 4-year degree, it's 2.6. So having a key to unlock some doors are pretty important. And lastly, people with a college degree earn a little over $17,000 more a year than a person with just a high school diploma. So those are the most popular arguments for free college and why we should have it. Now, on to the arguments against it. I think we can all agree on lowering the interest rate for college loans and allowing students to refinance to those lower rates would be a good idea. So the plan has some agreeable points. But here are the most popular arguments against. First, it's not actually free. Over 60% is paid through the tax on Wall Street. The rest would be paid by the state. That's billions of dollars each state would need to come up with. The states would have to cut spending from other places or, which is more likely, raise your state taxes. Also, even with free tuition, it doesn't mean a student wouldn't incur debt. In a 2013 study, students in Sweden who have free tuition had an average of $19,000 of debt, while at the same time, the average U.S. student had $24,000 in debt. $19K for what should be free doesn't sound all that free. And after factoring in living expenses, books, and other fees, that's the reality. Also, they have a much higher cost of living, too. A second argument would be, you need to fix the problems with the way colleges are operated. For example, in public colleges right now, the head of the basketball team in California, Kentucky, Florida, and I could come up with 10 more names, make more money a year than any other state employee. A basketball coach in college makes more money than any state employee. More than the governors, more than the senators. And that's your tax dollars. In New Hampshire, the biggest earner as a state worker is a hockey coach for a public college. These are $1 million paychecks being handed out. Another example would be to take a look at the University of Michigan, a taxpayer-funded school. The vice provost of equity and inclusion makes $400,000 a year. On top of that, the university spends about $11 million a year on diversity and inclusion staff and programs. Now, I'm not going to hop down that rabbit hole of asking if equality and inclusion classes are relevant, but I will ask a simple question. What kind of jobs are available for people with knowledge of equity and inclusion? Not that many, probably closer to none. A complete waste of money from the taxpayers, and a complete waste of time and money from the student. I actually applied for jobs pretending I had one of these degrees just to see what kind of job I could get. Each company sent a recording of people laughing and pointing at me. So this raises the important question of, are these institutions going to be responsible with the quote-unquote free money, the taxpayers' money? And there are plenty of other examples to go over in the future. The last point Is college worth it? In a recent survey, 60% of Americans say yes. But what does the facts say about it? Currently, 53% of college graduates are either unemployed or, more likely, in a job that doesn't require a degree. Add that to the fact that only 36% of all jobs require a degree, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So is it a good idea or a bad idea? At the moment, we have to lean towards bad idea. I don't think the institutions have proven they plan on being responsible with taxpayer dollars. Maybe other countries with free tuition don't have this problem, but we do. Another way to look at it, and I can only look at it through my perspective and the people I grew up with. If you are poor, free college tuition is unaffordable. Now, because people like to challenge the definition of poor, I have to explain this. If you are fresh out of high school and you don't have the option of living with your parents, you are poor. If you are living at home and your mom and dad are paying the rent and all the bills, you are not poor. You might be in a tough spot, a little bit of a struggle, but you're not poor. Poor is when you get kicked out of the house at age 15. Poor is when your mom's an alcoholic and your dad's gone, or vice versa, and you're put in an unlivable environment. Poor is when you can't go to a 4-year college because if you are not working, you don't have a roof over your head or food, and you might die. That's poor. Those are the people who need help. Those are the ones who need an advantage in this economy. The majority of people who are going to take advantage of the free college tuition is people who have the ability to stay home, go to school full-time, or work part-time. Most who are well off, which leaves the poor class paying for tuitions they can't use but would want to use. If you want to come up with a solution for people who are poor, like a payback program for community colleges or something to that effect, that's about $3,100 a year and typically gives you flexibility to work full-time. I could get behind that, but helping some people who can already afford to go to school to take a class from an overpaid professor to get a degree that isn't going to land them a job, that's a bad effing idea. Let me give you this analogy. Let's say I had a brand new car and I want to sell it to you. It's your dream car, no miles, brand new, all that, and I want top dollar for it. And you want to buy it, but when you see it, I've smashed the headlights, I've cracked the windshield, the tires are missing, the engine's cracked, I spilled Sunny D everywhere. And I look at it like, yep, I still want top dollar for it. My whole thing is, shouldn't we try and fix the problem first before selling it to the American people? With that being said, this is a show about solving problems, so let's solve a problem. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? Now, I believe we wouldn't be having this problem if banks and the colleges took responsibility for their students and the bloated prices they have to pay. So how do we make these institutions more responsible? I'm going to answer that with a test question. Let's see if you've been paying attention. In episode 4, I had a segment called Corruption in Politics. It's where we talked about the good and the bad of lobbying in Congress. Let's see how sharp you are, and if you didn't listen to that episode, you might get this answer right anyway. Get your pencils. Here we go. Students are not allowed to file for bankruptcy on student loans. Was that a good form of lobbying or a bad form of lobbying? You may start writing your answer now. And I think you can put your pencils down now. With that being said, here to defend free college tuition is our first guest, Bernie Sanders. Thanks for being here, Bernie.
I'm not Bernie Sanders. You know this, Nick.
Now, Bernie, do you think the good outweighs the bad in your proposal?
Nick, why are you doing this to me?
And also, what do you do if the states don't want to take on the extra financial burden?
It took me like an hour and a half to get here.
Bernie, I would appreciate it if you would at least try to answer a question.
Okay, whatever. I gotta go.
Fine, leave. Typical Bernie Sanders, always pretending not to be a 4-foot-tall Asian girl.